Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're all doing well, and welcome to this community showdown. It's going to be Nurgle versus the Dark Elves, and man, oh man, these are certainly some strange builds. We got Mass Nurgle Toads with a Sorcerer character versus the Dark Elves who are going to be coming in with your boy Rakarth, a Charybdis, and a Hydra. Man, very exciting stuff, actually. Now, Toads are obviously much better than they were in the previous patch. Getting a big armor-piercing buff is going to make them substantially better against many of the Dark Elf tools, like Corsairs, and some of the cavalry, like Coldwind Riders. Let's see what other armor there is. Yeah, so we have the Blackheart Corsairs. The Hydras obviously aren't really going to care about the Toads' extra armor piercing. But yeah, I mean, it still does help, but that is a hell of a lot of Toads. I mean, Dark Elves, I suppose you could see like a wide Dark Elf build, but I do feel like a Dark Elf build against Nurgle probably would be very like Scourge on or Chariot heavy with a lot of like skirmishing elements and poke. But I mean, this build can certainly stuff you back. The Toads themselves have pretty good mass and can be aggressive. So Sorcerer Lord, Spirit Legion, Buna, some Nurglings, and now looking at the Dark Elf army, it is going to be a Charybdis and a Hydra with Rakarth on foot. Oh, this is so cool. We got Rakarth running with his Charybdis and Hydra. Oh, that's super exciting. But Nurgle has had a bit of a history with struggling with like big single entities if they don't bring the right tools. So, you know, theoretically, this build actually could be somewhat feasible against, especially this Nurgle build here. But yeah, we'll have to see. We got Corsairs in the back. We got Burning Head to clear out Nurgle hordes, and a couple spears and Corsair units kind of mixed in. So man, oh man, this is going to be a wild, wild game. Let's do a little bit of fast forwarding while the players get in position. This is one of our new maps on the Total Tavern map pack. It is the Valley of Lies. It's a really, really cool one. Look at the Toads moving out. Look how haggard that looks when they all move together. All right, guys, the battle's on. The thing about the Hydra and the Charybdis is they can only be like one place at once. And oh my god, we got Rotflies coming out. So it's basically all of the buffed Nurgle units, right? Rotflies did get extra models, and I believe they used to have 10 models or 9, and now they're up to 12, so that's a pretty big buff. And we get Coldwind Dread Knights coming in. So the Dreaded Dread Knights might actually struggle. Like if a Toad hits them in the front and then they get flanked by 2 Rotflies, I mean, they could totally get wrecked. We'll have to see. And we get 1 Hydra, and the Spear is moving into fight. And Rakarth, I believe, is an anti-large fighter himself, so he is going to be able to probably methodically poke through these Toad models. But the Barons of the Bog, most likely going to be piling in here and debuffing the stats of these characters. And look at this surround. That was actually really, really smooth. So the Rotflies coming in the back. It's like players are just so not used to Nurgle using Rotflies, or even they're like, what is this new DLC unit they have on the roster? We never see this. And the Coldwind Dread Knights getting absolutely pounded by the double Rotflies as well as the multiple Toads. Obviously, it makes sense, right? This is like almost 3,000 resources versus about 1,500, but it's still cool to see the Toads being used with the Rotfly synergy. Now, Dark Riders do pile into the back and do some decent damage against the Rotfly, so good kind of counter response there from the Dark Elves. Also calling in some Shades, so they're going to be throwing some fat Shade. Shades hit very, very hard and are also not bad in melee combat, so I would wager they're going to be shooting over at the Plague Toads or the Rotflies. We'll have to see what they're going to be targeting here. Nurglings do take objective number 1. Objective 2 going to be taken by the Dark Elves. Their Spears and Hydras, and Rakarth able to just absolutely crush these Plague Toads back, so it looks like both units of the Pox Riders and Plague Toads did retreat. However, on this side, the Nurgle tide is certainly swarming, and you know, this is where Toads shine. I mean, Spears will be pretty cost effective against them, but the Toads also are anti-infantry, right? So they're going to be able to feast on some of these Spears for sure. And inevitably, the poison and the mass that is just here and the sheer number of Nurgle bodies is going to be able to drown these Spears out, I would wager. So more guys coming in. Furies, also a really good answer to try and break a spear line. They hit very hard. They have 36 melee attack and 44 weapon strength. Pretty squishy, but against spear units, which rely on their bonus versus large, they're going to be an excellent choice. Although it looks like they're going elsewhere. I think having them just break those spears could have been okay. But oh my god, there's just so many Toads all over the battlefield. So Objective 1 still owned by Nurgle. Objective 2 probably going to be flipped here in a second. Yeah, it looks like the Toads are going to start getting that one back right now as the Dark Elves are pushed back into their spawn a little bit. So we do see the Dark Riders coming up and over the hill. Some of the Shades are compromised in combat, so Rotflies did jump over on them, but those Rotflies should probably get karate chopped by the Charybdis in tandem with the Dark Riders. And this is a good usage of the Furies. Using Furies to go after the repeater crossbows is very, very smooth. Dark Elves should probably summon in another Dark Rider unit to try and peel those Furies off. Over here we got your boy Rakarth. Rakarth fighting with his Chill of Santar and the Dread Spears. Maybe going to be making his way over towards objective number 1. But it's like Nurgle is like playing like the Beastmen right now. Just like all these like mobile like cavalry and, or I guess their own cavalry equivalent of the Plague Toads, more like monstrous units. But yeah, they're just kind of like swarming the objectives with just like this huge amount of mass. And the Dark Elves, obviously, that's the problem. Like on a big wide map like this, I think that like monster heavy builds are a little bit better if you're in what I like to call a lane map where you have a home objective. But since all the objectives here are kind of contested in the middle, it's going to be pretty good for like mobility and like gunline factions. And in this case, it's just the mobility of Nurgle. Mobility and Nurgle just doesn't seem like should ever be said together, but Dark Elves can for sure win most of the blob fights. Nice little breath attack coming in there from the Hydra. Does take down a couple of the Plague Toads, or at least does some damage. And Rakarth going to be moving in, and Ramsay Bolton certainly taking no mercy as he does get that anti-large attack there. And the Toads are going to be committing to the Alpha Strike, as we do see the Charybdis getting hit with the Spirit Leech. Whiplash is active though, look at that. Going to be saucing up its stats of 750, so certainly will be capable of dragging down many of those Toad models. As the Toad Legion of the Rotfly is going to be heading over to the middle, maybe looking for that apocalyptic, a big center fight to try and win the battle once and for all. In the back, Dark Riders were able to peel back those Furies, but it looks like another unit of Furies might have come in, or maybe it's the second one on top of the Shades. Shades could probably fight them off, but at this point, and with the Rotflies nearby, I don't think it'd go super well for them. Slaanesh's Harvesters coming in, classic Warhammer 2 unit. These guys, probably not a bad choice against Furies, actually, if you think about it, as like a tech against any sort of a demon faction, because they do magic damage, so they're going to be circumventing the physical resist of pretty much all these demonic units, including Toads. Okay, that actually could be a really cool tech against Nurgle, something that our Dark Elf friend here, No Gain, has showed us, is maybe having those in tandem with another Doomfire Warlock could be okay against some of the demon factions as like a fast, hard-hitting sweeper unit. But Dark Riders will probably eventually be grinded down by Plague Toads. We do see the old Nurgle Air Force hunting down the repeater crossbows, and the blob fight in the middle seems to be going in the favor of Nurgle. I mean, they just have so many Toads. It is truly unstoppable. Chill of Sontar going to be getting popped by a Spirit Leech, and he, of course, is that Chill of Sontar? No, that's the Cryptus. Cryptus does have like some good targets nearby, but it just seems like it's just there's just too much for it. It doesn't have enough support. We see 700 value on these Pox Riders, so even the basic Toads are starting to grind their value up against things that they normally wouldn't be that good against, right? Demon Spew comes up, and Nurgle does hold on to the side objective here, and we do see objective number 3 being held by Nurgle. Toads causing heavy disruption of the backfield, and the thing is, like, Dark Elves, in order to win this matchup, typically speaking, are going to need some missile play. Like, fighting Nurgle in melee is never really a good thing, even if, like, in theory, you have some okay tools against them. Nurgle's, like, poison and overlapping healing effects. It's just so nasty. That's going to be a nice burning head here on the Demon Spew, but they are somewhat armored. They have 85 armor, so they're not going to care too much about that. It still doesn't do bad, but it looks like he's just kind of keeping them in the back, trying to keep them for capture weight. Doesn't really need them. He's able to push back these units. So the big Cryptus getting taken down, and the Nurgle Sorcerer Lord isn't a bad fighter either. He's got good combat stats, although he is poisoned right now. You know, he's still a decent fighter. The Beast Lord's Gaze going down, giving leadership and mitigating the Rampage, keeping that Cryptus going to the very end. Very, very flavorful for sure. As the Cryptus only sitting at about 800 value. The Hydra is sitting at 700, so maybe a little bit too deep in the meme realm. I don't know. We'll see if the Dark Elves can pull this one back. They're not that far behind on value, and Nurgle doesn't really have a lot of healing in this build since they went with Death Magic, so the value is a little bit closer. Granted, they still do have like Fecundity. I would say like the big deciding factor that we've seen so far is how good of a job Pink is doing at hunting down all of the skirmish cab, right? So the Dark Riders are really some of the big rest. Like if there was just a Dark Rider unit sitting here for the Dark Elves just pounding into these Pox Riders, like the Nurgle army would fold like a piece of paper, right? But without the missile fire and some of the support and, you know, the I guess lure of fire and like having Burning Head is good against Nurgle infantry spam, but against this like Toad style of play where you just have like mass Toads, Burning Head, like the magic is basically useless for the Dark Elves. Like if there was like a Soul Stealer, some sort of a blob punishing spell here, it'd be a totally different story, but lure of fire is usually the go-to against Nurgle. Like it's I don't fault the no gain for that. That is 100% what you would normally bring. So finally, Dark Elf's going to start getting some firepower here. Maybe we can be able to kind of pull some value back. We do see Burning Head going down, and it, you know, maybe saying Burning Head is useless is not like 100% true. It still does tank leadership. You can see it probably leads to the crumbling of some of these demonic units, which isn't, you know, it's not meaningless here. Side objective taken by the Dark Elves, and this objective comfortably owned by Nurgle as they send more Plague Toads over here. But now the Dark Elves do have shooting online, and you can see a lot of demonic crumbling going down, and, you know, variables starting to really shift here. However, I think it might be a little bit too late. I think Nurgle's gotten a really, really big point lead. We see some Coldland Dread Knights coming out. I can't help but think that maybe the Sphere Riders would be better here, and because Toads are going to be used against you. Like, maybe not in this numbers typically, but I think the anti-large variant might just be better. Granted, these guys will be good at clearing, you know, infantry pieces out quicker. Like, if they wanted to be killing Chaos Warriors of Nurgle, you know, Plague Bearers, whatever, they're going to be better than the Sphere variant would all day. So you can see he turns around and fights with the Dark Riders to sandwich in the Furies, allowing the dreaded Dread Knights to arrive, and the Dread Knights will be able to get a pretty good little momentum shift here and push those Furies back, maybe allowing Dark Elves to restabilize that objective. We will have to see. Now, in the middle, we do have Rakarth. He's going hard, man. He's got the Beast Slaver and Beast Lord's Gaze, so he's quite literally gazing at himself, taking a note out of Sigvald's old book here, looking at his value. Rakarth's probably almost paid for himself. He's on foot, you know, pretty cheap. He's almost gotten about 1,000 value, which isn't terrible. Repeater Crossbows getting some nice shots into the back of the Demon Spew here, as we do see the Dark Elves starting to pull value back. Now that they are getting a little bit of that Repeater Crossbow fire, you're starting to see the dynamic change. But once again, Rotfly's just sitting and waiting in reserve, and I would imagine that Pink will probably grab both these Rotflies and just swarm in and surround these Coldland Knights. That would be the play. Yeah, and it looks like that is going to be the play. So Rotflies is like a... This is what was always supposed to be a thing for Nurgle. Like, having Rotflies to counter heavy shot cav that can just abuse the hell out of Nurgle infantry and, you know, pretty much everything in the roster. But now that Rotflies are, like, a little bit better, I think we could be seeing, like, a couple Rotflies in matchups against Bretonnia, against the Empire, because, like, you know, otherwise Knights of the Blazing Sun, Knights of the Realm, whatever, are just going to have a field day against many of your units. But having that answer now is really, really cool. So Rakarth and the Chill of Sontar holding it down in the middle. Chill of Sontar obviously pretty good. It does have the healing, so it's going to be far more resilient than its cousin, the Charybdis. Charybdis, of course, more of an anti-large specialist. Side objective, we're getting a little bit of shooting here. Some Dark Riders trying to clear out Chaos Warriors of Nurgle, and the armor piercing does help, but these guys have silver shields, and they are extra thick. These Chaos Warriors of Nurgle are rad. When the old world eventually comes out, I'll probably start a Nurgle Chaos Warriors army in tabletop. That'd be quite a bit of fun. So here we do see Rakarth. He is still holding it down. Some Nurglings getting broken. Spears on their way in. I mean, the Dark Elves might be able to start grinding some objectives back slowly. Although we do see Bleak Swords coming out. Bleak Swords going to get wrecked by these Plague Toads. Yeah, those guys just going to be hopping all over their face. These swords will certainly be croaking in just a minute. Yeah, these Toads are pretty neat. And yeah, they do good damage too. I mean, the Toads like had some niche applications before against like light infantry spam, but now they're just kind of good against all infantry, which I think is really, really flavorful for sure there. You know, like the thing about Nurgle, like in many renditions of Nurgle in tabletop, like they have armor corrosion. Like if you're playing Death Guard, which is the Nurgle-focused Chaos Space Marines army, like one of their main faction mechanics is lowering the army of units nearby. So if somebody comes at you with like a super tanky Space Marine, every unit on your like your Plague Marines, your Terminators, they have this like aura of rust and corrosion where nearby armor is lowered. So they don't really care about like fighting armor. Like Nurgle's whole thing is that the poison and the acids and things like that will just corrode through enemy armor and slowly melt them down. So I think that change for the Toads was really, really good. I like that one. So Fecundity going down here. Dark Elves actually starting to grind this objective here. We do see the Hydra moving in. And, you know, though the Dark Elves are mounting a bit of a comeback here, like I think eventually they would be able to get the middle back. And on this side, how is it looking here? I mean, a little Burning Head attempt, not bad. I still think Nurgle just has too much control over the battlefield. And honestly, we see the points here. It's rapidly closing in on 400. And what weird builds from these players. But this stuff is the spice of life. Like seeing, you know, good players experiment with different strategies. It's how new things are discovered. And also it's just really, really fun to see every now and then these like underrated units coming in and having a little bit of fun. So at this point, I think it's GG. Dark Elves grinding in the middle a little bit, flipping back and forth. But Nurgle is very hard to push off objectives. And Chaos Warriors holding like champs. And that is going to be a victory for Pink and the Septic Claw. Really fun builds. The Toads on parade, man. I'd be really curious to see how that Nurgle build would work against like a traditional Dark Elf build, you know, with like Malekith and stuff. I feel as if it might struggle against like Witch King with like big Soul Stealers being dropped on their heads and like a ton of repeater crossbows with like Dark Riders and Scourge Hunters defending against Furies. But even still, it was a really, really fun showcase. And also No Cane, No Gains build was I love the name. Was quite a bit of fun too. Yeah, Hydra, Charybdis, and what else was in reserve? The Dreaded Dread Knights, just all the fun stuff, man. GG, well played. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that one. Let me know what factions you'd like to see. If there's anything you feel we haven't seen in a while, do let me know, and we'll try our best to get them on the channel. GG's. See you next time. Take care.